So, Tanuja, you want to start evening?
Yes, our champion would be starting formatting.
Okay.
Yes, good evening, everyone, and good evening, sir. I welcome you to this GSen brief decoding session as well. I hope every one of you have started the GSen successfully, and I hope you have figured the site and you have started the design as well. Uh, with the with the sorry, with the doubts we received, so we schedule this brief coding session as well with the sir. So here we have Mr. Sanjeev Vidyati. So he's a professor and head of the Department of Urban Planning and Policy and the founding director of the Masters in City Design program at the University of Illinois Chicago. So a warm welcome to you as well, sir. And Tanuja, over to you. Okay, Tanuja is having some internet connectivity issues, so we can start with the session. So you're on mute.
Sure. How do you want to handle it? There were few queries that I replied to. Yes. So there were few queries that we have replied to already. But if there are any other pressing issues groups have, I think this might be a good point in time to try and answer some of those. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yes, sir.
Go ahead.
So if any of the students have any queries, you can raise your hand. Students, I request if you have any queries, you can put it in the chat or you can raise your hand. So probably you can give a short note on the brief so that students can have a grasp over it from your side.
Sure. So, this is part of as I'm sure all of you have read the brief. If not, it is important to read the brief word by word. Um, and this brief is written carefully and it clearly explains what we are expecting the focus for this year GSaints as well as past years and the next years. So this is a part of a 3-year process where we have turned our attention to India's pilgrimage centers. As you are all aware, um, India is a land of religious diversity and deep beliefs. And across the length and breadth of India,
Sir, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, so this automatically, Tanuja, reverts to mute, I think. Something happened, it's the setting in the Google Meets puts me on mute. So we want you to turn attention to locally prominent, to, identifying a locally prominent religious place. Um, a good idea would not be to select, good idea would be to select not too big, but you know, and a reasonable size pilgrimage center that we can focus upon and are able to cover it within the stipulated time, and focus on the water aspect. Remember, water is considered holy in many traditions, and it is sort of omnipresent in pilgrimage centers. It appears in various forms. Sometimes it's a large water body, sometimes it's a flowing stream, sometimes it's a um, small tank. But in all the cases, this water is part of a much bigger water system that is around these places. So we wanted you to pay attention to the larger water system. So start from a little bigger scale, and then see how the particular aspect of water that you are studying is part of that bigger system, and then focus upon improving it. And you can improve it in various ways, as the brief describes, in terms of its quality of water, quantity of water, but do something that could be empirically measured, and focus on the architectural aspects of this effort. Um, so yeah, two layers would say we want to pay attention to. One is the layer of pilgrimage, and that's important because of the increasing tourism flows within the country, and young Indians wanting to travel more. And oftentimes, these religiously prominent, locally significant places um, um, attract very little state attention. Not many people are paying attention to these places, and architects can surely help. So that's one layer we want you to focus on. And the second layer we want you to focus on is the layer of water. That's again a component not many are focusing on. So it's the interaction of these two. That's where the focus would be appreciated. And then the brief describes the kind of expectations we have. It's a good idea to look at some of the better examples from previous years. GSen is one of the original and long-standing trophies of NASA, right? So this, as I said, this year's work is a continuation from the work we did last year, and we also hope to continue in the next year. Extra proposal. So we have a question from Z518 NASA India. We had a query that can we give extra proposals apart from the water proposal, maybe something like a guest house or something else. I mean, so the focus is on water, but if in order to support that kind of, and we don't want you to divert too much attention on other proposals, because then that can go and groups can interpret it widely. But as long as that is within the scope and it's not too diverting, remember, this is also good training for your professional work. You don't want to deviate from the brief too much. But if it is supporting of the water idea and doesn't dilute your focus on other things, sure. But do not make that the centerpiece of your proposal. The brief is critical. Pay attention to water, as I said, and the nexus of pilgrimage. So it's the people's interface with water that is important, and then the quality of water itself. And try to think of the bigger picture. Why we are alerting you to this? We are alerting you to this because not many people are paying attention to these small pilgrimage centers, and the centrality of water in the organization of architectural spaces in these places. So your generation needs to do this work, and that's where this debate is going towards. Any other questions or comments you guys have? Be happy to answer. Yes, there's a question from Kanika. And the water, does the water has to be perennial or can it be seasonal? Absolutely. But if we are paying attention to seasons, then you want to then your proposal should have components that describes the high season or low season. Seasonality is important, as you guys know about Indian architecture. We, even day and night and morning and evening and summers and winters. Yes, seasonality is uh, is fine. The water need not be perennial, but then your proposal should ideally describe what would happen when it is off the season. Other questions? Can the proposal be futuristic? Uh, yes, absolutely. Why not? But remember this, as I previously mentioned, pay attention to the spirit of the brief. And it's not only for this particular trophy, but for other trophies as well as future work. Um, your proposal could be very well be conceptual. Your proposal could also be futuristic, but I would pay attention, close attention, to the fact that the tourism is happening as we speak, and people want, right. This is a pressing issue. So futuristic, yes, but there must be a dimension which is more grounded and which sort of speaks to the reality of the place in our particular time. All designs at some level have a futuristic dimension. If you want to enhance that, if you want to make it more prominent, that's a good idea. But I would not lose sight of the existing situation of the place, and if we can improve the quality of space for everyone now, so that's important as well. Um, then there's a question from Mani Teja. Should we focus on only water systems or development of the pilgrimage town? This is a fantastic question, Mani. Both, right? And that's what I spoke about, is the intersection of two. I'm glad you caught it. So the overall idea is the improvement of the pilgrimage town. Absolutely. That's why we are doing this. But water is central to it. So we are paying particular attention to the dimension of water. So आप दोनों चीजें करें, right? You pay attention to the broader water system as well as you pay specific attention to the vice versa. Pay attention to the overall development of the town and paying particular attention to the water system. Then there is a question from Akid. Akid says he mentioned about ORA in brief. Can you please expand this point? What do you mean by water cycle? Drishti wants to know what's by water cycle, the natural process of water or the drainage system of the site? Both. So I'm not sure what about ORA in brief, ORA. Keith, please clarify that point in chat box while I try answer this. Trishi Giltwalas. What do you mean by water cycle? Water cycle is both the natural process of water, right? The water falls, it evaporates, it gets to a point, drains, accumulates, evaporates again. So that's one. And the second is the drainage system of the site is also part of it. So it's both the things. It's the overall water cycle in the site, right? So where is that water coming from? We want you to pay attention to from the rainwater when it drops, what happens, how does it reach, and then how does it go back up, evaporate. So unless we're paying attention to that entire water cycle, we would not know why this particular feature of water that you're paying attention to in your site fits within that overall scheme. So good point. Aura. So you mentioned about aura in brief. No, I'm not clear, Akid. Which aura did I talk about? Can you vocalize your question and explain it a little bit? I'll be happy to answer it. Now, so a question from zone 217, can we take previous year's site and make an extension to the proposed site that we did last year, fulfilling this year's brief requirement? I don't think that's a good idea. And we talked about that a little bit while when we were composing this brief. I would stay away from last year's work. That is, it's don't go there. If I was, I think it's a good idea to take on a new site, a fresh site, and approach it from a different angle. There are other complications involved of plagiarism or building off others' work and so on and so forth. So, not a good idea to take um, the work your college did from last year and then go from there. So Vaishnavi asks, um, if can the proposed structure be temporal or permanent? Does it have to serve the function for the water system or the rituals? Either way is fine. And it could be temporal or permanent. That's fine too. And the brief sort of talks about it. So does it have to serve the function for the water system? Yes, because our focus is to improve is to help the development of the pilgrimage center overall, and specifically to the water dimension. So yes, it should serve the function. That's the basic idea. Tanya asks how necessary is to propose a design that can be constructed with the present technology or can be futuristic in the sense of future advancement in technology. Yes, as I said, futuristic dimension is fine, but the focus is on the present. So if I want to include a futuristic dimension, that's good, but I would not lose sight of what's going on currently and would try to redress that, because that's where the spirit of the brief is. How much is the current footfall of the site important? Can we choose a site which has lesser? Yeah, definitely. That's the idea. That's a good question. Zone 301. The current footfall, we actually do not want you to take sites that are very prominent. Don't do that, because those prominent sites they attract popular attraction and people would be paying attention to them. So, they are fine. We want you to especially focus on local and regional places that people are not paying attention to. Those are the ones that need architects' attention. So yeah, lesser footfall is fine. Don't worry about that. So Madhumitha asks, what is the expectation of the jury with cohesive storyline? Good question. So what's a cohesive storyline? A cohesive storyline is where different parts of the story fit together well. The thing hangs well together. This is how it exists. This is what we looked at water. This is what we found. This is what we are going to do. And this is the expected outcome. Now, are these 4, 5, 6 pieces fitting well together? You found something, you're doing something else is happening, we're measuring something else and something else. That's not cohesive. Pieces are not fitting together. The different parts of your story have to fit together. And 25% of the grade would come to, from the cohesive storyline. Cohesive storyline is always important. The work architects do shapes places, and places in turn shape people and their lives and their everyday routines. So it's important that we are able to tell our stories in a very cohesive manner where pieces fit together well. So that's important. Can the drainage system be a part of the proposal? Absolutely. Drainage system can very well be. It's an integral part of the water cycle. So definitely it can be there. Yes. Yes, you can improve the drainage system or increase it so that include the physical health care. Absolutely. That's good dimension. I would encourage you to focus on that. Yes, it need not be only holy water. We're looking at, right? So water cycle refers to the broader water system in the place. So good idea to pay attention to the broader system. Now, so Z106, is it necessary for water system around the site to be a part of site pilgrimage? Absolutely. Absolutely. It is part of the system, right? Or the water system can be away from the site. Depends, your site could be smaller, but the water system could be much bigger. That's entirely possible. It would depend upon the local context as to what's going on there. In some places, it could be very micro focus, depending on where the water is falling, how the water is coming there. Maybe it's an underground spring, right? So pay attention to those local nuances, and paying attention to them is important. The jury appreciates that. Khushi asks, if we're taking any river as a holy water, will we have to give water mapping in detail? I think yes, in sufficient detail so that the jury can understand the locality you are looking at, and the water cycle you are referring to. This is a good question. So it gets to the point, what's the scale that we as architects should be focusing on? Sometimes we want to zoom in, sometimes we want to stand out, right? Zoom out. And that zooming in and zooming out is something you want to figure out. So think like a juror. What kind of an information would you like to have so that you can understand both the overall local context and the specific features of the particular place in detail, right? What detail, how much should we zoom out, and then how much should we zoom in? That's where Khushi's question get to. So do that well, that in and out. Your faculty should be able to advise you well at both. But I would think a regional scale, if the water cycle is bigger and the water system is bigger, which usually is, and then zooming in the local side to give more specific details. So Z329, a particular heritage site, possesses a fair. Yes. That's, so yeah, it's seasonal. It happens only for a few days. And that's fine. Should a space be proposed in addition to design? You could, of course, they do it because our broader focus is improvement of the pilgrimage center. But then we have a particular focus, that's water, right? So do both. I would say, go ahead and propose the overall improvement, but while paying attention to the water as well. How important is for the design to address, so this is Z601. Will submission be evaluated based on the presence and absolutely, this question gets to the heart of the brief. You did well. Absolutely, design must address the cultural and historical significance of places where we are working. And that's not only true for GSen Trophy, but any work which you do. Wherever we as architects intervene, we want to be respectful and responding and in an appropriate manner with the historical and cultural significance of places. And that jury pays specific attention, whether the groups have done that or not. Yeah, that's a good question. Madhumita asks, the solution might be hiding in plain sight. Oftentimes, this is what happens, that when we're paying attention to something, वो चीज वो सामने ही होती है and you don't see it, right? Because it's hiding in plain sight. So that oftentimes happens. And I think simplified and complicated, it's a good idea to try to be as simple as minimum few moving parts so things don't complicate it. But then it would depend on the situation, the particular place, what we need to do. Akib asks, is it necessary to have site near residential and water bodies as well? Depends. I would pay attention to as I said, about the overall improvement of the pilgrimage place and water, and then see what's nearby, rather than paying attention to what's nearby and letting that decide where I turn my design attention towards. Hira asks, what are the things to be considered in study of water system? Good question. What is our focus? Our focus is improvement of the place, and we want to improve the place by also improving the quality of water. So pay attention to the particular aspects of water cycle that affect the quality of water in these places. Yeah, it could be quality, it could be quantity, it could be the water-human interface, it could be some issue with the water. It could be seasonality of water, right? Whatever that is specific to your place, pay attention to that. That would help. Uh, Z690, can the proposal be in relation to cleaning the associated water body? Absolutely, absolutely. That's part of the water cycle and it's specific to places. Improving the quality of water, oftentimes. The folks have argued that the quality of water, in fact, reflects the overall health of the place nearby. If the place is doing well, the water quality is oftentimes nice and clean and um, potable. Even you can drink that. But and as all of us see in India, that the water quality of our public water is decreased over time. It's not all that good. So improving the quality of water is fundamental at some level to the design task at hand. Um, so cleaning and updating it, good idea. Anushka asks, can our interventions be working with time? Yes, which means they're not solving problem today, but the process they're going to solve problem. Absolutely, that's the futuristic dimension. So you could say, I want to start with a small step today, and then in 3 years, this is where we see it, and then in 5 years, and then maybe 10 years, right? And beyond 10 years might be a little bit too much. But keeping that futuristic dimension that you keep doing this and that helps improve the quality of the space and quality of water over time is important. Mm, uh, Temporal dimension in architecture is oftentimes uh, 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 critical to the future development of these places. So, good idea. I'm glad Anushka pointed this out. Z310. What should be the ratio of importance when we are addressing the pilgrimage and water treatments? Excellent question. Should we keep it 50-50 or should we focus more on the water treatment part? That's a clever question. It's like sweet and sour. When you're making sweet and sour noodles, how much should be sweet, how much should be sour? And that depends on the chef, I would say. But yeah, 50-50 seems like a good idea, an ideal we want to approach, but in some places it could be 55-45, and in other places it could be 65-35. But absolutely fantastic question. Keep dono pe focus, okay? It's the intersection of water and place. That's where this is. But depends on the situation, right? I wouldn't be like, hey, it has to be equal. If I'll divide my sheets. Half of my sheet would be water, half of my sheet would be place. That's one way to think of it. It could also be design conceptually focused, that will focus first on water but zoom out onto the place. There are very many different ways in which we can uh, combine the two focuses to strengthen each other rather than compete with each other. Cohesive storyline. Bring the water and place together. And water sits as part of a larger cycle or water system of that place. And that water system sort of shapes that particular place in many ways. वो आप लोग focus कर रहे हो. Okay. Then we have a question from Diksha. And Diksha asks, only the rivers or water bodies like ponds? Yes. All water bodies, ponds, small lakes, kunds, water cycle means from the moment rain drops from the sky, or water comes out of a groundwater source until it goes back up again. So water cycle is the whole thing. So lakes, reservoirs, streams, kunds, springs, everything's part of that. We have to raise, Paul asks, we have to raise the improved. Does that awareness should also be focused on water? Yeah. We are, as I said, water and place. Those are the two things we are focusing on at some level. The temple or any but form to show about the temple in the sheet, or can we relate it to water with respect? Yeah, that's a good question. Z518. If there is a religious structure, it definitely is, right? It's a pilgrimage center. So it's a dargah, or it's a temple, or there is a religious, there is a shrine of prominence usually in these places. I would refer to it, but I would not go on to document it in great detail. No. but its presence is vital. So you want to include either in plan or section somewhere, maybe the broader site plan, right? I mean, you cannot escape that. So usko to bilkul include kare. That's a good question. But that's not the primary focus, right? So proposal is related to water with respect to culture, correct? But don't overlook this, the shrine or the temple. Include that in your broader scheme. Yes. Matthew asks a good question. Can we focus just on the site level water system rather than the entire town municipality? Yes. Site level, yes, good idea to focus specifically on site level water system, but you want to show to the jury that you paid attention to the larger scheme, right? This is the thing with water. Water, it might just appear here, but at a particular point, but then it is part of a larger water cycle, and we don't want you to lose sight of that fact. So, refer to it, where it's coming from, where it is going, what's the broader picture, and then you turn your attention towards that we're trying to solve the problem at this point, at this particular space. Anushka comes back and asks if you're proposing any intervention with a certain technique to maybe clean this one, so how detailed it has to be, like what level of it. Now, I would leave it at that. Here is where we propose a treatment plan, or here is that what we plan to do it like this, or here is an organic solution that we have prepared, or we conceive of. That level is fine. You don't have to detail out the engineering specific details, but thinking of you know um, uh, overall conceptualization is important. How many students can serve on the jury panel? This is a question I'll refer to Tanuja. Tanuja would know this. I'm not aware of this.
I think we'll decide that further on after stage one.
Okay. Z104. Do the residences need to be within close proximity, or can it be a few kilometers away? Yeah. I mean, that depends on local specific situation. Either way is fine. It could be close, it could be nearby. Its water supply from, is that place a part of the site? No. Can we propose design to water from yeah, this again is specific to local condition. This is difficult to answer. But if the part of this, I would refer that in the water system, that this particular place gets water from outside, and this is what we propose for this particular site. In a situation like this, which if it really is true, if the water comes from, let's say, in tankers from 10 kilometers away to a particular place, then maybe a good idea would be that, hey, this is not a good idea. This is not sustainable. What we would rather propose is collect water nearby, collect all the rainwater that you can get, and then use that for this particular purpose in this pilgrimage center. That would be a good solution to be focusing upon. Prathmesh asks, can we propose and design some infrastructure where it is lacking? Yeah, definitely. Remember, our broader focus is improve the quality of life and the overall quality of civic space for everyone in that pilgrimage center. So, bilkul, you can include some infrastructure. Tanya asks, if parts of the lands of the chosen sites have been encroached by locals, can we include in our design, or do we have to design around it? This is oftentimes an issue. Um, um, and this you would see, and this is one particular aspect of, let's say, urbanism in India. How we organize our urban settlements and places where humans live. In India, there is a tendency that things organically, slowly and gradually over time, they become more congested and they become denser, and we have this habit of slow. It's almost like, and I'm glad Tanya points it out, it's almost like a gradual, slow, silent kind of a growth. So you go to a place today and you go to a place 50 years later, you'll find it's much more denser and much more tighter. So, but you don't want to be how do you say, remove all the encroachment. You want to be very careful. It's like surgery. What needs to be removed, what needs to be kept. It's a characteristic. It's a intrinsic characteristic of Indian urbanism. In other words, that this is kind of a slow growth. I wouldn't call it encroachment, because encroach. I would not call all of it encroachment, because encroachment has a legal dimension to it. I would call it urban growth and densification of some sort. Some of it is nice. It actually consolidates places. It actually helps bring places and people together. But some of it is, of course, for other dimensions. So be careful and like a careful surgeon, you know what to keep and what to remove. So that's where I would go with this. Um, Keep comes back. Can we have water recycling system in our site? Yes. Oftentimes that's a good idea, but then if you're thinking of that, then think about the siting. What kind of system? Give some details so that the jury can understand what you're proposing there. Just making a box and writing water recycling system might not help. In other words, you want to be a little more detail oriented there. How does the building foster resilience and community in the face of challenges? Yes, Aman, that's a good focus. Thinking about resilience and how we can respond to bigger changes is a good idea. Chirag, what are your thoughts on moving the ideal to safer, better place, or changing the location of the temple if necessary? Huh. Uh, I personally am not against it, but I assume people have deep sentiments with location of places. Um, so if the local community agrees, sure, go ahead and do it. But for our purpose, for GSen, which has got a few weeks, I would not go that far and try figure out should we do it or not. How in depth should the mapping and analysis of the water system be? That's a good question. Um, we just talked about zoom in and zoom out. So think what level of detail would help you make a persuasive case. Now, I want everyone to pay attention to this. What is a persuasive case? As architects, when we are presenting our work to a client, to a patron, to a jury, to an outside, we want to be persuasive, right? We have got an idea and we are telling that we would help improve your quality of life. Jo bhi hamara client hai, whatever your patron is. And you want to make a persuasive case. You are persuading people to support your design and invest their money and invest their resources in supporting it. Very important. So your design detail should always be adequate to support that persuasiveness. That's the way to think of it. You don't want to think he wants to 100 and wants to 10 and wants to 50, wants to 200. That's our way of coaching you in the studios about different kinds of scales. But think, why are we even doing it? We are doing this exercise to make a persuasive case. So I'll use level of detail required or helpful to substantiate, to help make my case persuasive, so that I'm able to persuade the other party. Okay. Can we do a literature case study other than taking a local site? Well, that depends. I think literature would be helpful. Absolutely. You can say, hey, there are these 3 cases literature describes, so that's supplemental to the local place. This is the thing with architecture. Architecture, unless it's an unbuilt piece of architecture, an exploratory design, most architecture exists in real places and tends to shape real places. So including a local dimension would be a good idea. If anything is in R, if anything in R is useful for our site, but it is not eco-friendly.
So you're on mute again.
Yeah, so this is something that happens, Tanuja. It puts me on mute. So thank you for alerting. The twofold challenge asks for first analyze the existing water system. Again, the brief asks for analysis of key factors of site, empirical. Exactly what type of analysis is wanted. No, then the brief, when it says key empirical, show empirically how would that help improve the quality of water. So analysis is two level. First, analyze what exists in terms of water, and second, show us after your design is done how would it improve. So that's a analysis of how it would improve, whether the quality of water, quantity of water, interface. Make a persuasive case. Money should be a publicly accessible water system for the use or of any specific area. Yes, the focus and outcome of your effort is a publicly accessible water system for the use of general population. Correct. That's what the focus is. So Pratiksha asked about the persuasive case. So, the aim of all design work when we do as architects uh, is to improve the quality of the users, quality of life, quality of their work, make people happy. That's the beauty of architecture. We can actually help create efficient, aesthetically invigorated places. Now, in order to do that, we need finances, we need resources, we need support. And that comes from your clients, and that comes from your patrons, and that comes from institutions and individuals who commission our work. Now, what do they need? They need to be persuaded that what we are telling them is the right thing. And that's where they should put their resources into. So, as architects, you want to learn this craft. How do you make a persuasive case? So, think like a lawyer. The lawyer goes to the court and makes a persuasive case. They show evidence. They show we're going to do it like this is what happened, right? So you using evidence and then presenting your case in a persuasive manner is a very useful skill. And I'm alerting you that it's a good idea all for all your design, whether in college or outside. Think about making a persuasive case, and that's very helpful towards your cause. Uh, Pratham, what is the number of maximum proposals can be given at one site in context of water systems? Not too many. Don't dilute your effort. Uh, One main proposal would be my sense, and some supporting that strengthens the main proposal, but not too many proposals. Do not scatter your energies trying to do too many things. Uh, Amban, what measures were taken to minimize the design psychological? Yeah, it's a good idea to, in today's world, we want to do things as organically and as sustainably as possible. So, ecological footprint, the minimum ecological footprint is usually a good idea. Could we propose more than one water purification or conservation technique? Why not? As long as you're not diluting focus, and as long as helps you make a persuasive case, good idea to do that. Um, if the site has some other existing structure, then can neglect it while designing, making it conceptual, and make it more relatable to the present time should be addressed as well. I think, yeah, that's like वो आप देखें, in that particular location, how much should we do it, that particular existing structure. You can't, that depends on the situation. Difficult for comment from me here. Noel then comes back and asks what all things we should include in our sheet. I think the brief describes that well. Sheet 1 is more about plans and sections and elevations that helps us situate site plans. Look at previous year sheets. Some of them were excellent examples. Tanuja, I think that's a good idea to share some of the better work if it's not available already on site. Especially the top 4 or 5 entries, they provided a good level. And the second big sheet is your views. And then the postcards were used to highlight salient points. So look at the best entries from last year. And many of them would provide inspiration as well as prototypical models that you might find useful as you compose your own work.
Yes, so the citations and special mentions of last year would be available on the website. We're looking forward to put them. So it'll be available.
Yes. So those are the ones, as Tanuja pointed out. I'll look them up. Fantastic examples last year. Prathas, sir, can we include interviews of local people to address the problems? um, you know, At one level, engaging with the local community is an excellent, fantastic idea. We did not ask for it because of the paucity of time. You guys have only a few weeks. And this is, in addition to all the other work you guys do, school work and college work and life. And architecture students have so little time. So we didn't want you to do in this community engagement. But if you're talking to people and if there are important highlights, I'll include small excerpts of interviews somewhere on the sheet. We spoke to 27 local folks, and five of them highlighted this, three highlighted this, and seven wanted this, something like this. But don't make it an overt dimension or a large part of your design project because it was not asked for. Eventually, when you guys are working, always a good idea to include the dimension of the community and talk to people and try to figure out what people really want in these local places, but not at this level. Okay.
So a correction. So the previous year's entries are already there up on the NASA India website. So students can check it out. It's under the trophies tab under the GSen Trophy.
Thank you, Tanuja. That's very helpful.
So also we'll take this as the last question from Akib, and then we'll have a general session. I hope that works.
Sure. Can we use the work of some architects related to brief? Yeah, with proper citation, or if there is something very particular, I would say so and so architect designed this, or use that as a case, as was a question asked previously. One of the ways we as architects learn is always looking towards precedents. Who has come before us, who has tackled similar problem, and can we learn from them? And how do we learn from that precedent? So yes, good idea including those, but not too much, right? And with proper citation, plagiarism is a terrible idea. Just don't even go there, so using someone's work without properly citing. But Akib's point is clear. I think that should be fine. A little bit. The last question, Z104, yeah, a little bit. But it's not you're not really looking at as a planning issue, but enough to pay attention to improving the quality of life for everyone. Yeah. Okay. Now we turn back to Tanuja and focus on the last few minutes on more general stuff. Go ahead, Tanuja.
Yes, sir. So one question from my end was your experience about the last year entries. So if you could give a general gist about the last year entries, your suggestions and advices to the students, what could be corrected and what were the things that were on point, and also the jurors' words, that would be of great help.
So since this is sort of, I'm glad Tanuja brought that up. You know, since this is a continuation of work at some level, especially the thematic focus on pilgrimage centers. Though we were focusing on public spaces in pilgrimage centers last year, and this time we have shifted the focus on the water. That's why looking at the top entries, there were many top entries. I would say almost 1/3 were very powerfully done. Which was very nice to see, actually. But what actually helped was those four categories that we talked about, right? So the coherent storyline, the empirical evidence, the quality of graphics, and paying attention to what the brief really is asking you to do. So pilgrimage, is essentially a spiritual act. So there is a dimension where people are, there is a broader connection with the surrounding. So that's one dimension. And then the second dimension is the particular focus of the theme that year. So last year it was public space. So as you will see in the top entries, they really honed on to the idea of public space. This time we are hoping you guys would hone on to the idea of water and where it is coming from and where it is going, and how, can we improve the quality or quantity or its interface with the people in order to improve the quality for everyone, right? So that's sort of the focus. Um, and it's two sheets and few postcards. So you do not really have too much space, and don't clutter it up, right? So I mean, pay attention to telling your story intelligently in a persuasive manner. That's what I think some of the best entries that did well encapsulated it. The second thing, I guess, uh, uh, that stood out for the jury last year was what I call legibility. Legibility. What is legible? It is easy to read. What is illegible? Bad to read. I mean, difficult to read. A stereotype example sort of talks about that doctors write very illegibly. When a doctor writes a prescription, it's very illegible. Architects usually write very legibly, and we teach you lettering for that purpose, so that you are legible. So when you compose your sheets, and this is an inside secret I'm sharing with you all of. When you compose your sheets, you don't want to put too much material on it. If you supply, your generations call it sometimes uh, TMI, too much information. Don't do TMI. You be legible, supply just enough but adequate detail so that the sheet is legible and people are able to walk away. Okay, so this is what they're saying. It's legible. I can see where they're coming from and where they're going. Right? That to my mind was for several of the projects. This Now I'll speak on the contrary. On the other hand, another thing that also stood out for jury members was that some of that are people, we tended to be biased towards uh, uh, design proposals that actually had dug deeper into the site, who had actually thought about the cultural and social significance and connections of that site with its history. That's an important one. So it has to be focused, and then it has to be legible, something like that. It comes clear that you guys have thought through, and that happens only when you've really thought through it. When your design is clear and you've thought through the local connections and how this place can be improved, and then but what you're presenting is very legible. um, that's the way to sort of think of it. I hope that helps, Tanuja.
Yes, sir. So, and one question on a larger context. Why do you think we have to focus on urban, spaces in general? We as architects, how is this trophy helping? If you can relate all of them together, would be.
That's a great question, Tanuja. So you know different parts of the world have different traditions in how we sort of shape our built environment. Um, Western Europe, for example, Western Europe, so countries like Netherlands and Belgium and Luxembourg, they do not differentiate, even France and Germany to a large extent. They do not differentiate between different professions shaping the built environment. So that means architecture, urban planning, urban design, sort of seen as one profession only. So you go to architecture school 5 years, you learn as you guys are learning, and then you do 2 more years of school and you specialize in one of the three. So everyone, is sort of on the same page. More Anglophone countries like the US and the UK and Australia and New Zealand, Canada, they distinguish, and India is sort of in the same boat. We distinguish that architecture is this, and urban planning is this, and urban design is this. Uh, on the contrary, so this is what we believe in, right? And that's how the professions are organized. Uh, but most of the India has few planners and very few urban designers. It's your generation is going to be on the forefront of this urbanization, and you guys need to be aware of the urban dimension and urban impact of our work. And NASA realized this early on from 1950s.
Allow my testing.
That's why we have had this GSen Trophy for a long time. So I would pay attention to this urban dimension and keep this in mind. Though you might be focused on sites, you guys would be designing buildings and campuses, but your work has a larger urban dimension. So one of the aspects of GSen is to sensitize you all to think about the urban impact of your work as you guys go on becoming successful architects. I hope that answered the question, Tanuja.
Yes, sir, it did. And so, before ending, would you like to say any more thing else?
Uh, yeah, so pay attention to the brief. I'll say go back to the brief. The brief is fundamental. It's clear and it's uh, carefully detailed. So read that uh, and focus on it. And we look forward to. There was some exciting work, and my suggestion would be to look at the top entries from the last year, not one but several of them. That gives you a better, more well-rounded picture, and then start preparing accordingly. And we look forward to seeing your work.
Thank
All
you
the
so
best.
much, sir. Thank you so
Okay,
much, sir, for doing this and taking your time out from your busy schedule.
that's all right. Tanuja, always a pleasure. Okay,
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And I hope we get to see some very good entries.
yes. All right, guys, all
Thank
the
you, sir.
best.
Have a good day.